It's a pleasure to be here.
We are going to have to restart because the sound wasn't coming off. Sorry, I was testing in the beginning. I'm doing everything wrong right now. So,
It's okay. That was a practice run.
yeah, just a practice run. Isso foi um ensaio. Pessoal que estão nos ouvindo, essa será uma entrevista em inglês. Vocês não vão ouvir mais português por aqui agora. Espero que estejam ouvindo. And that's it for Portuguese for today. Officially now restarting. Tana Pigeon, welcome to our live stream.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oi, pessoas.
We already have a bunch of people on the chat, and everyone say hello to Tana. We are going to have a chat about Mythic, about solo RPGs, answer some questions, trying to make some complicated questions for her to answer. And I think this is going to be very, very nice. So,
I'm looking forward to it.
Matheus, we need to every time translate them. So we have 10 moments in speaking English, then we change to Portuguese for our community to understand, right? Not so many will understand what we are speaking.
well, or maybe we can set up the subtitles later for the
Perfect.
video on demand. So I think that it is going to be quicker or more dynamic if we just do it on English and then set up the subtitles. And we have some English teachers on the chat that I know, so they are going to translate everything, I'm sure. So people are already making fun of me, saying that with all the languages, I chose mute to begin the interview. So that's it. We are going to sign today.
Yes.
So, we are very, very happy to having you here, Tina. We are very excited because this isn't a usual opportunity for us to have the author of one of our games to talk with and to let the community to also make questions and tell you how much they love your game, because this has been a constant since we started the crowdfunding for Mythic here on Brazil.
Yeah, when we start the project, when we told people in 24 we're gonna release, the people start to asking when. So we are throwing always later, huh? And we decide to release in January 13th. They explode, right, Matheus?
Yeah.
And we have when we released the landing page for the project, we had more than 300 people
signing up for the landing
signed
page.
the landing page. It was amazing. It was amazing.
We reached the basic our basic goal in just 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And since then it has been amazing. So everyone who is here on chat is part of this community that we are growing into. We already knew that Brazil has a very prolific solo RPG community. There are some Facebook groups that are very active. They release their own games. There's zines and all kinds of content. And we weren't sure about how much this community was going to get on board with the project. And then Mythic happened. And
That's amazing.
I think we can start by bringing up some of the questions that people asked, mainly about how did you begin in the solo RPG world, and how did Mythic begin from your experiences?
Well, it's when I was a little kid, I really enjoyed sitting in my room making board games out of paper, just pencil and paper, just making up games. And that was like how I'd spend a weekend. Then I was about 10 years old when I encountered Dungeons and Dragons. And it didn't take me long to start thinking, you know what, start doing the same thing with role playing. It's like I enjoyed playing with groups, but I still had this, I really disliked playing games by myself. And so I started thinking about it when I was like 12 or 13, and I made a lot of random tables. Later in life, I got into psychology at college, and started to get some ideas about decision making and probabilities and things like that. And then ultimately, I kind of coupled that with I enjoyed doing tarot readings, and for a while I was using that as a solo oracle. And gosh, that just kind of iterations that all kind of developed into Mythic.
So a lot of different references and experiences.
Yes. I liked the at the time the kind of solo adventures that existed were these kind of choose an adventure type things, like you make a decision and you go to page 26.
Yeah.
But the problem with that, of course, it wasn't an actual role playing experience. You weren't actually making any decisions. And so I really wanted to find a way beyond that. And I was mildly interested in computer artificial intelligence, and I don't know. So I tried to bring all these things together to solve this problem, because I wanted to play role-playing games solo by myself and have it feel exactly the same as with a group. And so the earliest versions of Mythic were really complicated and not it took about 12 different versions of it before I finally came down to this very simple approach.
So, what came first, the World Mill Games or Mythic?
Mythic, yeah, I would say. In fact, the very first version of Mythic, honestly, I didn't think anyone would be interested in it. I had no interest in actually publishing it. I figured it was too strange, and that role-playing was entrenched as a social activity. But I loved it. I've been playing it on my own for about 4 or 5 years, and it struck me that I loved Mythic so much, but I had my game collection in a bookcase, and it just didn't feel right that Mythic didn't have its own book. It was just a collection of loose sheets of paper in a folder. So the very first edition of Mythic, I just wanted to make one single copy just for myself. It was just personal. And at that time, RPG Now was online. It was a precursor to Drive-Thru, and Lulu had just appeared, and so Print on Demand was brand new. And so I thought, you know what? I made this book for myself, and why not throw it on RPG Now and make a Lulu copy too? So I threw it out there to the world too, and I had zero expectations at that point. In fact, I didn't even bother looking at the sales charts or anything like that until months later, because I just figured, no, it would just go into a black hole.
So did it start slowly, or was it a burst just from the start?
Yeah, well, the first month or so, just as I suspected, no one was interested. In fact, I got mocked. I go online sometimes to forums, and I got brutally made fun of. How sad are you? You don't have any friends to play role playing games, and it was bad to the point where I stopped promoting it.
But this happened today. A lot of people don't see solo RPG as RPG. It's kind of crazy, in fact, because for me, it's entertainment. You play, you have fun. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't get it. I would say, well, you play video games by yourself. Why is that any different?
Yes.
Arda
you
Choose
read
Your
a
Own
book.
Adventures book. People on the chat were already relating to Steve Jobs and then Ian Livingstone
course.
books. So
Fighting fantasy books, or even just reading a book or watching TV. You're doing that by yourself. You're enjoying it. So I never really understood, like, okay, it's just a different way of playing the same thing.
I think the people has a problem to. It's kind of, hey, I don't want people to see me speaking alone. They're gonna call me crazy or something like that. Maybe, I don't know.
well, when I'm live streaming solo RPGs, I got made fun all the time.
Yeah, that's just how it went. But yeah, so I kind of gave up on it, on promoting it. And then suddenly I started to notice like sales, like lots of sales. And I had someone contact me out of the blue and say, hey, do you mind if I start a fan page for this thing? And interestingly enough, the earliest players of Mythic were the tactical board game, like the war gamers.
Mm-hmm.
They actually were my first audience. I never even thought about that, but they were using Mythic to play the opposite side, so they can do all these complicated tactical battles by themselves.
Oh, this is so cool. I never thought about playing one game with Mythic.
Yeah, and that was the first audience of Mythic. I never even intended it. They were my first. They got Mythic off the ground. They were the ones promoting it online. They were the ones making the fan clubs, and then the role players started to find it. But it was the wargamers first that promoted it.
Well, just as in the general RPG history, it began with the war games. And then it spread.
That's right. Gary, the original chainmail, the Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, you're right. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when you saw that Mythic already starting to grow in community, not just because of sales or because the wargaming community, but you see, okay, Mythic has its place.
Yeah, that within the first couple of years, that fan club that player launched became a real hub for Mythic players. We had daily discussions going on in there, people putting up house rules, a lot of back and forth, just like what you see today. It's the exact same thing. And so that community became very active. And that's when I knew, like, wow, this actually is a community. It's not just a game kind of now. This is all these people, and they would bring in other people, and their enthusiasm would help propel it. And it was just very cool. I just really enjoyed that aspect of it.
And nowadays, is Word Mill Games just a one-person operation, or do you have collaborators?
It's just me. I do have I have some people I work with. I have my art is all done by the fantastic artist Jorge Munoz. Whoa, yeah, beast! And line editor Mel, and so I work with those two people. But by and large, it's me. I do all the writing and typesetting and website and take out the garbage and all that.
In the end, in 2004, drive-thru came. It became a solid place to market RPG. It's mainly not only the big ones, but the small ones. The indie market.
Yes.
It's grow in the drive-thru RPG. And it starts to saw a lot of things very cool release showing to us. Well, for me, it was like discovering new world. I start to read too many different things. I start playing with GURPS. I play GURPS for more than 10 years, play DD, but in the years 2000, it's blowing my mind with drive-thru. And in the end of 2000s, between 2010, we have Fiasco, for example. And Fiasco broke a rule that is to have a game master in the RPGs. And in Brazil, it was something very unknown. We released Fiasco in 2011, I think it is, and it was a blowing mind to a lot of people. And for me, my understanding that between 2010, he really started people to see that game is not really necessary. There are a lot of mechanics that can help us to control the narrative of the game. You see that Mythic found that place in between the time. And the people start to look to Mythic in a different way.
I think so. Yeah, I never really intended to how do I put this? The intent of Mythic was just to play without a game master. But what you're describing, like how the industry started to develop with moving away from this very traditional and separate game master, it's interesting that the industry in that sense started to move toward Mythic. It's like Mythic works really well with that idea. And even if you're not playing solo, those kind of ideas, like Mythic and solo play works just as well with a group, just no game master, right? Everyone's the game master. So I think I got kind of lucky in that sense. Like Mythic was not intended to appeal to that a GM-less crowd per se, but it really naturally connects with that. And I'm really glad for things like Fiasco and other games there, whether it's like a player-facing style role-playing game, anything that minimizes the total control of the game master and kind of spreads that control throughout all the players. I think that's good. I think it's just good for play all around.
So someone asked on Instagram, how did Mythic change your life after publishing it? Is it your day job nowadays, or do you get recognized on conventions?
No, I don't get recognized at anything, but here you're interviewing me, so this is being recognized. So I guess yes. How it changed my life? For most of my professional life, I've been a graphic designer, and I make publications and such. Over the years, and especially the last 5 years, I've moved away from client work, and now Mythic is probably about 90% of what I do, which is great. I've long wanted that to happen. Part of that was with the pandemic, it really damaged the other parts of my business. I lost a lot of clients and things like that. In the end, that turned out to be a good thing, because it kind of gave me that push I needed to focus on Mythic. I started working on the second edition. I started working on Mythic magazine. Within months, those things were moving along, and suddenly it's just like, you know what, this is what I'd wanted to do for years, and now I'm forced to do it, and it's like, I'm happy about that. It's like, yay.
And you have created a community around your Patreon, right? It's very cool to see that.
Yeah, I started a Patreon, which really helped get the magazine going, and the Patreon members are very supportive. Without them, the second edition book wouldn't have happened. So they've just been great. And that's, I'm glad you brought up, we talked earlier about that, like the beginnings in that fan club that started in the Wargamers. The thing that's always struck me about Mythic is, in a way, I kind of feel like just like someone, like a shepherd or just someone moving this along. It's always been such a community thing. Like the players have always had a lot of input, and it's been propelled by the players. And even now, like with Mythic Magazine, I ask the players, like, what kind of articles do you want to see? And I see it as much of a collaborative effort between me and the fans as anything else. Like, it's been a group effort from day one, and it hasn't changed at all. Like, here we are, like 20 years later or so, and it's still a group effort. I mean, this is almost like a fan-created game, you know? So it's just, I really like that. I like the group community feel of it.
And there it is, another parallel from, in a way, how Mythic gets into the games, changing the games and becoming a collaborative effort too. And I think we can begin to explore some of the doubts and questions that people had. And I would like to begin asking you if you have in mind any kind of an unusual combination that you made with Mythic and other games, or that you saw someone doing, games that you didn't think would work together.
Yeah, okay. I hear this sometimes. People ask, "Hey, what games work best with Mythic? You know, what works best with Mythic?"
And what doesn't work, of course.
Right. And I had to say my gut response is, you know, well, every game works with Mythic. The problem with that is, like the way I play and the way a lot of people with it play is, like, not necessarily always following the rules of the role-playing game you're playing with. Like, to me, I have no problem taking a very crunchy role-playing game and playing with Mythic, but I won't bother learning all the rules. You know, I'll just let Mythic stand in for anything I don't know.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll just make a fake question cover for the rules. And so that way I can pick up a game I've never even played. Maybe I've even only looked at the cover or something. A lot of people aren't used to playing like that, right? And so they're like, you know, you got to learn the game though. It's like, no, you kind of don't. But so that's one use. Like, and I talked about the ones in the magazine as far as like using Mythic to actually learn how to play a game. You know, just wing it, using Mythic fake questions when you don't know it. Mm-hmm. But every now and then draw in a couple more rules or read another section of the book.
Yeah,
there's no need.
Got into the second edition, right?
Right. So if you're playing it with another role-playing game, there's no need to actually learn the whole game you're playing with. Just sit down and start playing, and let Mythic fill in for the rules you don't know. And then as you learn the rules, you kind of replace those. So yeah, and that's like mind-blowing to some people. It's not the first thing that occurs to them, because they're used to playing role-playing games a certain way. You learn the game, you read the whole book, you learn everything, and then you play it. And this is like the opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are trying to reinforce the idea during the crowdfunding that this is a great opportunity for people like me who have that shelf full of books that never played before.
Yes, we have in Brazil we have a lot of people that collect the books. They buy, they read, but it's not always they have the opportunity to play.
Right.
Sometimes the group doesn't want it. Okay, so it's an opportunity for, hey man, get your book, play now.
Exactly.
At least one time.
Yeah.
Right.
Or, man, you have a new book, want to learn the rules, use Magic to learn. Then you teach to your group. So it's amazing. It's amazing. It's.
Yeah. And it is interesting that you mentioned before the war games, because we've also been talking about using Mythic with board games and
Novels.
yeah, and any kind
Right.
of fantasy worlds that you see on a movie, read on a book, and you can expand your own story from that.
Right.
It is really opening our minds on how we can expand the possibilities of RPG games.
Yeah, it really is.
Even you can use it to write your own material, your own building, your own novel. It's man, it's crazy. Yeah, we can think a lot of use to Mythic. It's amazing. It's really
Yeah,
amazing.
it's kind of funny because we were talking about how we get made fun of sometimes by like traditional players, but once you get away from that, once you like really like kind of start wrapping your head around solo play, you realize it's got like there's so many things you can do with solo role playing that you cannot do with social group play. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, but I'm just saying it's not so much you're losing something, you're gaining like so many more possibilities of things you can do. That once you start to realize that, wow, just so many possibilities.
Exactly.
We have some questions from the chat.
Yeah, I was going to ask the first.
Yeah.
People are interested in knowing how much you know of the Brazilian solo community. If you know any authors or games.
I am not that plugged in. Honestly, this contact with your company and this experience and this crowdfunding effort is really my introduction. Not entirely. I mean, I've heard from players from Brazil in the past, and I've heard how the community has been developing there. But no, this is a new community for me. So I'm actually excited to find out what's happening.
So now everyone who is watching has the duty to tell you some games,
Yeah.
some of their favorite games. Send
Please.
some links here. Send some play tests and.
I love it. Yeah, I love solo. I mean, I love Mythic, obviously, but I mean, I love all the solo communities and everything. I love to see where the ideas and from different parts of the world, and it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, a lot of people told us that they use, especially the game emulator deck to play. They
Yes.
bound it to other solo systems, and that's a fun beginning.
Yeah, there was already a YouTuber that made his own version of the deck, translated it himself, and was already playing and showing it to people before we began. It was very curious.
Yeah, and that's cool. And actually, that's another aspect of solo gaming that we can touch on is like solo systems, Mythic and other ones. They tend to be really modular by nature. That it's very easy. Like if you like Mythic and you like another system or a different system, it's really easy to kind of mix them together or take things you like or you don't like and put them together. So that's like if you have a growing solo community like you do in Brazil, that gives you like so many options. You don't need to like just choose one option. You can choose like the parts of options and then make the experience that is right for you.
Exactly. And looking at another question from the chat, did you find it hard to put all of those concepts on paper when you began writing Mythic, or was it a book that almost wrote itself?
No, it was hard actually. Like I said, when I was first making Mythic, the early editions of it were a mess. Like the very first version of it was just a gigantic book of random tables, like just hundreds of tables. It was ridiculous, right? And I found that cumbersome, and it took multiple iterations of the game because I wanted it to have a feel. I wanted it to feel like it felt when I would play role-playing games with other people. I didn't want the system telling me what to do. I didn't want it limiting my options. I wanted to just sit there and play and have the game like talk to me like a game master. And the earliest versions of it were very complicated. And it took me a while to get to a point to realize that like it's actually very simple. You know, I mean, you look at Mythic, and at the end of the day, it's just a yes/no oracle and some tables of random words to roll for some inspiration. That's kind of it. That's kind of all there is to it. And it relies a lot on like this. I was very inspired by tarot cards, because if you think about it, like tarot cards work the same way. You ask a question, the deck gives you a few vague prompts, right? Mm-hmm. And without context, those prompts mean nothing. Like if someone says to you, travel by ocean and disaster. And then if without any context, you might, I don't know, that doesn't mean anything. But with context, like with a question in an ongoing situation, suddenly something like that takes on instant meaning, like your brain just grabs onto it. And so those are the principles that Mythic ended up being based on. And it's just very simple. It just relies really on our brain forming the connections.
Mm-hmm. And it is also a great training for that creative process of improvising during games, even during
Yes.
group games. Almost.
What we've been told. If you're starting to being a master in a game, use Myth to help you enter in this world until you have confidence enough to play. Okay, I don't need anymore. I can create everything from my mind. But why not you still using Mythic to wait? I don't know what will happen now. Let's play.
Well, some players will play like they'll play a traditional role-playing game where they're the game master and all this kind of, but they'll still have Mythic there as kind of like an assistant. Like if they're a little bit stuck, they'll ask a question or they'll roll, and then players don't even know it, but they'll roll something from Mythic just to give them an idea. And so, I mean, that works great too.
Well, do you play mainly Mythic, only Mythic, or do you explore other games, and how do you use it during your games?
I play primarily with Mythic. Sometimes I use only Mythic and nothing else. Sometimes I'll play it with other role-playing games. Usually I'm just pulling ideas from these games and inspiration. It's really rare that I play. It's really rare like I'll take a game like D&D and play it exactly how it's meant to be played, and then Mythic as a GM. Usually it's all Mythic with inspiration from another game. So that's kind of how I go.
Just from the game vibes, from the cover art.
Yeah. Honestly, that's just kind of initially that was because I was just short on time. I was one of those people who, like, you can see behind me, it's one of my bookcases of games. I see a role-playing game I like, I'll buy it. There's no way I have all the time, to actually learn how to play all these things. So, but I know Mythic. And so I'll just take a game off the shelf. Like you say, I'll go with the vibe. Sometimes I'll just start playing just based off the cover of the book. Like what does it seem to be about, and then go from there. And then I'll start maybe taking some elements from inside the book. But that's generally how I play.
And that is very interesting because this is how many other games began. I'm remembering, I think it was Deadlands that we also published. The game began with the author seeing the cover of another book and having all of those ideas without knowing anything about the book he saw. And many ideas begin like that. It is very frequent for people to ask how to create their own games, how to begin on this career, or or even as a hobby as game designers, and sometimes people don't know where to get their ideas from. And I think this is a great example of how you can work with very little to create something very unique. Um,
Yes.
do you have any tips, any tips on how to begin as a game designer, as a game author?
Yeah, I say my biggest tip if you want to get into game design is follow your gut and make the kind of stuff that you would want to play. I think a lot of game designers, I think they have to like study the market. Okay, well, what's hot and what's popular and what's like, what do people like?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't like that. Make the game you've always wanted to play, and even if you don't think anyone's going to like it, like if you love it, and you don't, but you think it's like kind of strange or it goes against the grain. The thing is, when you put it out there, the people who find it and do like it, they're going to love it because there's nothing else like it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you try to follow trends, you're just going to, it's going to be different but similar to other games. But if you follow your instincts, you're going to make something unique, and you're going to love it. And like even if if you're trying to get into the business and it's hard, like it's hard to make any real money at this, but it's like if you actually love what you're making, then it's fun. Like even if it doesn't work as a commercial product, you're having a good time, right? You're exploring your creativity, and eventually that audience will find you. The people who really click with that game will find you. And it's not like you need lots of people. You just need a certain number of people. So that's my big advice is just make the game you want to make, like just whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's that I always told to people when they ask, I create an RPG, I create a fantasy world, whatever. I say, okay, first thing you need to do is let the people see it. Just create a community around it.
Yes.
Put it into Facebook, in Google Drive, in WhatsApp. Let the people read and listen to what they say.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's just like what I was talking about earlier about how communities or how Mythic has been like a community project since the beginning. When you look at your game, it's not so much a product, but as a community. It really transforms it. Like what you're saying, you don't just publish the product, but you get on social media and all this kind of stuff. You're now creating a community, and now instead of it just being a product, it's an experience, and it takes on a life of its own at that point.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, even you might find a community that isn't what you were expecting, but it already it already embraces the game that you are producing, and I think it is interesting that we are in this kind of creators economy, creators, influencers, and we have this. We have a lot of people telling this in other media about how it is important to create the community for your Instagram page, for your YouTube channel, and it is nice to see how that works too, and it is a very deep concern on RPG games too. We see a lot of indie authors that are growing slowly but steadily with a very faithful, very loyal community, uh, and it mimics a bit what you are telling us.
Yeah, and it's not like I set out to do that or anything like that. I'm certainly no like marketing genius or anything like that. I just made something that I liked and threw it out there, and then the community kind of took it from there. They're the ones that propelled it and all this kind of thing. I just didn't get in the way. I encouraged it, and these days there's a lot of interaction between me and the community.
And what is the solo RPG community like in the US?
It's fantastic. I like to think that role players in general are special people. They're creative people. So that's the role-playing world. And then you find the solo role-playing world, which is like a niche of that world. And to me, they're like a special subset of a special group of people. And they're friendly, they're welcoming, they're creative. Like in our Mythic Discord group, whenever someone new comes in, people right away answer their questions. They're enthusiastic. It gives me a lot of faith in humanity to see the solo community, just good people. And a lot of us are very similar, where we love fiction, we love stories, we love living in our heads to some degree, we love creativity. And solo role-playing gives us an avenue to really bring that alive. And so I think people who share those traits like to come together, because there's not a lot of ways that we do come together. And this is one of them. And so it's just a real special environment.
We have a message on chat from John Victor.
A very sweet message, actually.
I will read it. As a queer person myself, I have faced some situation playing with others that were not so good to me, and it pulled me from crowded tables. After finding Mythic, my game life has changed a lot for the better, bringing fun and chaos to my personal moments and how I see RPG in general. Thank you for your work. Not really a question, but thank you. No.
Thank you so much. I love hearing that. Honestly, sometimes I'll get an email to that effect, and thank you. I really thank you for saying that. To me, those are the best messages. I just really, yes, that to me, I have some emails that I put, I'd print them out and put them on the wall because I'd like to see them every day. But yes, that's wonderful.
That was nice. And people are sending a lot of hearts on the chat box right now. I wanted to expand a bit on the publisher's side too. Was Mythic already translated to other languages and released on other countries and things like that?
It's just starting to be. Let's see. I think the Italian language book published by Need Games was probably the first translated edition, and I think yours is going to be the second, Brazilian. Yeah, and there's a Spanish edition being made, which should be coming out in a few months, and then there's a German company that is working on it. I'm not sure what their estimated time of arrival is on that yet. So far, that's translations.
Do you know if the Spanish version is going to be from Spain or from Latin America?
Spain. It's company, and it's Colmena de Papel. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. And Cursed Ink is actually producing it, and they're both based in Spain.
Yes, Spain has a strong RPG community.
That's great.
Some titles came to Argentina through No Solo Roll, for example. It's another published from Spain. Some titles was shipped through the Atlantic to here.
It would be nice to see Mythic unite in Latin America.
Yeah. I have a question. So you create Mythic Game Simulator as a book. When you flip the key to turn into a deck of cards,
I think that was sometime in 2014 or something like that. I just, why did I do that? I think I was just, why not? I was like, right? I did it just to see how it would work. And then when I got it, it's like, wow, this is actually really cool. I had plans to do more decks. I just ran out of time, but I was amazed how well it works. You can, the whole book in a deck of cards, basically.
So the next step is a Mythic Jenga tower to play Dread and Mythic.
Jenga tower, okay.
That's a great game. I'm pretty excited.
Okay,
I like it.
But you see, to us, did you have difficult to reach in the format of the deck?
Adapting the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really hard to condense it onto cards. And then not only was it hard to get it all onto the cards, but it was like, I wanted it to continue to have all the possibilities. Like in Mythic, if you're going to roll on a meeting table, it's 1 to 100 words, and you roll, and you could roll the same word twice if you wanted to. So on the cards, I didn't want it to be you like pull a card, it's got a word, and now that word can never come up again because it was pulled. Mm-hmm. So I had to make sure that every word was in there at least twice. So now I'm not only putting 400 words in there, now it has to be 800 words. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of cards. Mm-hmm. And so then I did this thing where there's a top and the bottom of the card, so you can put double information. It was hard, like trying to condense it and have it be as close to the original rules as possible. Yeah, that took a while.
Was the math hard to work out?
Yes. And I had to make sure I wasn't tripping myself up, like creating some unintended consequence where, like, if you put down one card for one thing, it would always like remove something else from the deck. So it's just that's one reason why the deck itself is actually a duplicate of itself. If you took it and apart, you would find that every entry is in there twice. So you can actually cut the deck in half and it would still work, but it wouldn't work as well, in my opinion, as far as once you play a card, then it would remove some things that couldn't happen again. So, I mean, that's why the deck is so thick, even with information being doubled on the cards. And someone did suggest to me, like using both sides of the card, like not having a card back. But personally, I just don't like that. I like seeing the deck. But to me, seeing the deck there with the card back facing you, to me says like mystery. You don't know what's there, right? I like that, and I get it. It doesn't matter which side of it, both sides, if you're going to flip it. But I like the traditional cards that way. So I don't know. Maybe in some ways I made it harder than it had to be, but I had a real specific thing in mind, and I just kept hammering at it until it got there.
Yeah, and I think you have to think about these kinds of feelings and experiences when dealing with cards and other forms of play. It was a very interesting solution, dividing the cards, condensing off that, and also the mechanic of drawing more cards and looking for only one yes or many yes. The way it works when dealing the cards, I'm very excited to experience when we finally have it. I hope Guilherme is doing a good work on that.
What the hell? No. No, we are known for a great crowd, so we're gonna make a great card deck.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure it'll be fun.
Oh, no.
Well, we have some other messages in the chat. Renan told us Mythic brought me back to RPGs, and not only as a toy, but the way as I always preferred RPGs as a creative tool, a tool to make me live in distant worlds. And Victor said, I said it before and I'll say it again. The solo RPG community is, funnily enough, a very united community. And I think that's beautiful.
I agree.
So, do you have a wish to create something greater, maybe in the meanings greater in size even, or in reach, greater than Mythic, bigger than the Mythic, or because for some people Mythic is already the reference for GMEs, so at least the most complete one. Do you have any plans on writing other things?
I do, actually. I'm working on a second edition of the Mythic role-playing book, which is different from the Game Master emulator.
Yeah.
It's the emulator, but with a full role-playing game wrapped around it, and so it's a completely standalone game. And so I'm working on that, and the theory behind that is that in the same way that Mythic Game Master emulator creates adventures as you go, the Mythic role-playing game is going to apply the same idea. It's going to like conceptually take a step back. Not only are we going to create adventures as we go, we're going to create the game itself as we go. And so you can start playing without knowing a setting, without knowing a genre, without knowing rules, without knowing anything. And all this stuff is procedurally created. So it's not just the adventure being created from nothing, it's the game itself. So
even the rules, you are establishing the rules as you play.
Yeah. I mean, it's got some basic rules, but you can like custom rules that are specific to your setting and your game will develop as you create it.
Yeah.
And so, and you don't even know. I mean, like you can sit down without any idea in mind at all, and before you know it, like an hour later, you might have a hero in a space opera battling creatures on a planet, or it might be a prehistoric thing, or it might be a fantasy thing. So yeah, it's like I want to take that Mythic idea and just back it up a big step.
It's like open a box to see what's inside. Let's
Yes.
see what happened today. Okay.
Yeah. It's a mystery box. Yes.
Great.
I'm very excited for it.
Well,
I
it's,
really like breaking up games and seeing how they work from scratch, and I think the Mythic role playing is going to be just like that.
I hope so. That honestly was the very first book. The Mythic role playing, where the Mythic emulator was intended to be that kind of game, but the role playing aspect didn't click, but the Game Master did. So now I'm kind of going back and like, okay, let's try this again, and I think this time I'll get it right.
Yeah, people are already asking, is that Mythic red cover?
Yes, it is. I'm sticking with the original. Yeah, the original books were the red Mythic role playing and the blue Game Master emulator, and so I want to stay with that tradition. And now it's in reverse. The Game Master emulator, the blue book, came out first, and that's going to be followed by the red role playing book. So yes, history is repeating itself.
It's traditional. Well,
Yes.
can you tell us more about the other books from the Crafter series and everything you published?
Yeah, one of my favorite books that, besides Mythic, that kind of goes under the radar is the Adventure Crafter. And honestly, it does really well. It rarely gets mentioned, but it's like, to me, I think of it as the Mythic, like a companion to Mythic. Like if Mythic had been created in an alternate universe, it might have been the Adventure Crafter. And the Adventure Crafter kind of does the same thing as Mythic, but from the opposite point of view. Like where Mythic is all about creating details, and then those details you expand into a bigger picture. The Adventure Crafter does the opposite. You start from a big picture, and then you come up with the details. And so it's a different system that does the opposite thing of Mythic, but it's still it creates a story. So a lot of people, for instance, will use, and here, let me just, there it is. It's really useful. You can use it with Mythic, and like the way I like to use it is, since Adventure Crafter is kind of like a story maker, it's a good way to like create a background for an adventure and a first scene, and then it gives you like lots of detail, and then you run with that with Mythic, and so it kind of gets you started, right? That's one way to do it, but there's a lot of ways you can do it, but it is pretty much like a narrative creator.
And Location Crafter, it comes out of this same concept of play?
Kind of, yeah. It was its own idea. Like Location Crafter, the idea was I wanted to be able to have a system where you can procedurally explore a location while creating it at the same time. And so it uses the same philosophy as, like Mythic's philosophy is to play an adventure while you create it. And so I just applied that same philosophy to exploring a location while you create it. And the idea there is, for instance, if you're in the middle of a game, your character comes to a castle. This is, say, like a solo role-playing game. As a player, you don't know anything about the castle. So what's the best way to explore room to room, right? And so Location Crafter it offers a method for doing that without having to prepare. Now, there's a lot of ways you can use it. In like Mythic magazines has modified it here and there, but that's the basic idea. And at heart, it's a pretty simple system, but I think it works pretty well.
And people are asking about the villain crafter, and I wasn't aware of that.
They might be referring to the creature crafter.
Yeah, the creature crafter.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, that's one of my oldest books. And again, same idea. Like everything I do, it's all about creating something as you go without knowing anything. Mm-hmm. So like the Creature Crafter, again, is another one of those systems where in a solo game, if you encounter a creature or a monster, this will help generate it as you play. So you don't need to create it ahead of time. It's just right away, like, what does it look like? What does it do? And you can generate those details as you're playing throughout the encounter. So you don't have to actually stop the game, create the play. Like you don't have to stop, create the creature, and then play. Mm-hmm. You could just play and then create the creature one detail at a time.
For me, when I see we got Mythic, we have Adventure Crafter, Location Crafter, Creature Crafter, I see all these books as complementary. When you start to write them, did you think in that, or no? You give it a life for its own, for each of them.
Well, my philosophy has always been the same, where I want to be able to play role-playing games without any preparation. I want to be able to just sit down with no preparation and play right away. And whether that's an adventure, like with Mythic, exploring a place like Location Crafter, creating a creature like Creature Crafter, that to me has always been like the holy grail of role-playing. Because in my earliest days, when I was first introduced to role-playing, it was like, okay, I'm going to read this 300-page book I'm going to find 3 or 4 friends to play. I'm going to get them to read this 300-page book. We're going to set aside 3 or 4 hours to play. I'm going to GM, so I sure as heck better know everything about this adventure. So I mean, like a lot of preparation. And I'm not knocking it, because in social role play, the preparation is fun. But for me, it was like, I didn't want any of that. I just wanted to play when I want to play, you know? So everything I make has that philosophy where you should be able to use it without any preparation. You just sit down and use it.
Yeah. And it seems that there is a growing interest for that in the role-playing community. People preferring games that they are not going to do much work before the game itself. It is a popular philosophy.
Yeah, and I like it too, because it's like, if you have to do preparation, you have to do preparation, like for a long game. But if you don't have to do preparation, then the preparation is optional. Like if you can do as much preparation as you enjoy doing. You don't have to do an X amount. So that to me, it's not necessarily getting it to where you're never preparing. It's getting to where preparation is a voluntary option.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems that someone has the same ringtone as you, so this is some kind of universal thing going on.
I thought I'd put that on mute, but I don't. I'm technology dumb, so
So this was a cultural experience right here.
that's right.
Well, there is an opinion here that maybe Hollywood should use Mythic to generate some scripts better than some things we are seeing. And people want to know about all the Mythic tables, the descriptors, and because it is very impressive when you see Mythic for the first time, to see all of those different tables, some generic, some very specific. What was your reasoning behind that? Why make all of those tables instead of just some generic ones?
Well, Mythic originally had 2 sets of very generic tables. There's the action tables and description tables. And those are meant to be general enough that you can use them for anything. And those are still in there. And you can still use just those if you wanted to. But the thing is that if you have something very specific in mind when you roll on the table, you interpret your the words you roll to fit what you're trying to get, right? Mm-hmm. Like if your character is facing an enemy and you want to know what the enemy is going to do, you might roll on the action meaning table to get some inspiration, like how do they attack you or something like that. But I thought, you know what? You can make that easier by taking those very general tables and then, like, through the lens of certain questions or certain subjects, boiling all those words down so you just get words that are really specific to that kind of subject. So that's why, like, I tried to come up with about 30 or 40, I think there's like 45 tables or so that cover some real general things like conversation to real specific things like dreams and legends and stuff like that. And it's really just to help. And you'll see a lot of those words actually appear on the more general list, but it's kind of like curating the general lists to make so you get words that are going to speak to like what you're looking for faster. You know, so that's the idea, to make the interpretations click faster.
Mm-hmm. It is funny that using the tables in game is one of the easiest things to do to introduce Mythic. Even during some conventions, I try to introduce just some bits of Mythic, and the tables work so well. But from my point of view, working when translating it, it was so hard to do all those tables because they have many different but similar words, and we are all the time burning
Trying to
some neurons,
understand.
trying to
Yeah.
compromise some things to get a word that maybe is a bit ambiguous. Was it hard for you to select the specific words on each table?
Yeah. In fact, I'd wondered about you as a translator because, each of those words is really specifically chosen and for the nuance in it. And I get it. And like what's nuanced in one language is it might be completely different in another language. And so that's why you'll even see some words that are similar, but not quite, like fight versus battle. It's like, okay, that's the same word, right? It's like, battle kind of has this connotation of a group or a larger affair. A fight, though, I don't know, that can even be an argument or something. There's like this slightly different nuance to it, right?
Yeah.
And that's important because, again, these words are all plugged into a context. And the context that they're plugged into will make completely different meanings. So if you put fight into one context and you put battle into the exact same context, you might get two completely different interpretations, right? Even though the context is the same. And so, I put a lot of thought into the words, and I really had sympathy for the translator because I thought, I don't know how. Well, without me putting like notes with all the words, I was like, okay, like good luck. But
We have an example, right, Matheus? Exterior and outside.
Yeah, we were discussing about that.
It's the same for us.
How did you handle that? How did you handle that one?
It's outside is exterior is how I can explain.
Exterior can mean like the exterior surface of something, and we went with that. Exterior, basically the same word in Portuguese. But for outside, we had to go with a couple of words. We used lado de fora, 3 words. Then it means outside, but we tried to find the same nuance that it could have.
See, it's like, okay, exterior, outside, same thing. No, not the same at all, right? It's like
Not.
little nuance matters there.
Yeah, and there is a good and a bad side on that. The bad side is that we simply don't have the same words with the same nuances,
Right.
same meanings.
Right.
But we have other words that have their own nuances, their own ambiguity, and we use that instead of trying to find the perfect fit. We
Good.
allow the same free interpretation, but from other directions. The
That's
freedom
good.
is
I'm
there
glad-
yet.
Yeah, I'm glad you did that and tried to not make it such a literal one-to-one. Because you're right, like your language is going to have different nuances than English, and you don't want to lose that. Like that's actually good. That's a gold mine. So it sounds like it sounds like you handled that super well.
Yeah, we are as the best translator company because of this.
We have a Goblin
don't-
trophy here back there.
Yeah.
for our
In the last 5 years, we won the last 5 years of the best translation. But
Fantastic.
just because of that, we not simply literally translate, because we have many writers who use urban language on the test. So, English, word in English has many meanings. So sometimes you need to take a brief and look for all
Right.
all the picture to say, okay, now this is the best chosen.
That's great.
Word.
No, I'm really glad to hear you bring this up because, like, to me, word choice is like really top of mind for me, and especially with those tables. So to hear that you went about that with so much care, that's like, yes, that's going to be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are going to have a very nice book on hands. And I asked you before to grab some of the books to show us how they are in physical form, because
Okay.
I bet everyone is as anxious as me to have those books.
Yeah. So there's Mythic GME second edition, and I don't know, yeah, how. I know you've shown some pages of your book in the promotional stuff, but like there's a opening page there. So that's that book.
Those whole page illustrations are so good.
Jorge is such an amazing artist. Yeah, let me find another one of those.
I need to say the PDF is amazing. I never told we have two kind of arts, low ink art, line art, and color art in different layers. I never thought about that, and I say, hey, this is so.
This should be the standard.
You know, it's what I said before is like if you're going to make a game, like make it the game you want to play. That to me, that goes for the book too. It's like a PDF. If I already have a PDF and like I want to print it out, but I don't want to like sucking all the ink out of my printer, it might be nice to turn the color off, to turn the art off altogether, or like sure that the images at the top and the bottom,
Yes,
they're nice and pretty, but if I'm going to print like 50 pages, I don't know if I want to use. So it's nice to me. I just wanted like, I don't know how many people actually use that, but it's nice to have the layers to customize the book. And that's the strength of a PDF. So why not have that in there? It's very easy to do. I also like to repeat information sometimes because I hate flipping through role-playing books. So I'm figuring some of this stuff should be in there more than once. So that's why I like, it's just, yeah, well, I'm glad you appreciated the layers because a lot of people don't even point that out.
No. We use layers on almost all of PDFs.
Great.
But every time I talk in print friendly, the art layers is okay. You print only the past. I never thought, why not to add line art?
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's.
And some people already brought that up for us on our group.
And this is not. I think I never saw another company use the same pattern like you to have a line art in a layer and then the color in another.
Yeah, they really should do it. It's easy to do. In fact, I started doing it on accident when Jorge sent me some artwork. And he accidentally didn't turn on the color layer, so I just got the black. He'll do like the pencil art, and then he'll do the line art, and then he'll do the color on top of that, right? So that's his process. Mm-hmm. So he accidentally sent me the black and white version, and like, hey, and then he said, "Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn on the color layer," and I said, "Wait a minute, that's all it is turning a layer on or off?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, can you just send both of them to me from now on?" It's like, because I'd love to use both. And he said, "Oh, okay." So yeah, that's where that came from.
Cool.
Easier than I thought.
And we are letting the community choose if they like I told you, we're gonna have a economic edition and a deluxe edition. It's like yours. The economic edition is a smaller. To be easily handled. In the deluxe will be letter paper, hardcover, and we are asking them to choose what kind of art they want in the economic, the line art or the grayscale art.
That's great.
Yeah, they asking for now. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the line art is winning.
Good. Well, the line art is beautiful, so that's a good choice.
Yes,
exactly. people in the chat, we are already a bit advanced here on our time. So last round of questions, please.
Franklin, Franklin Benini. Thank you for Tana for your fantastic work. My work schedule is a bit crazy, which prevent me from have a fixed RPG group. With Mythic, my problems will be solved.
Yay! Thank you.
Jogando RPG. Mythic is an excellent book and is helping me rethink some ways of playing RPGs.
Yeah, this is a good point. When I was translating Mythic and getting to know it as I translated, when I reached the lists, the character lists, it was a mind-opening moment because it was you mix together characters and events and groups, and everything can come up as an element on your lists. So did you have any inspiration for this specific interpretation of what a character could mean on Mythic?
Yeah, like when I'm putting together a table like that, usually I'll just kind of dump whatever thoughts occur to me first. But then I'm aware that like those are kind of my thoughts. So then I will broaden it up a little bit I'll start looking at some literature. I'll start looking at some TV shows. You know, I'm trying to get some inspiration, and I make a point of doing that so that I don't want it all just out of my head, because like I have my own biases. I have my own ways of looking at things. So when I'm putting together a list like that, I do try to look at other points of view and other creatives, and just and not just from like role-playing games, or from different genres. So if I look at something and it makes me feel something, I'm thinking, okay, that needs to go on the table.
Mm-hmm. Are you planning more one-page reductions of your books?
Yes.
Like one-page adventure crafter specifically, as they are asking.
Yep. And in fact, the one-page adventure crafter already exists, so that's been made. All the main books have had their one-pagers. So it's one-page Mythic, one-page adventure crafter, one-page location crafter, creature crafter. And I do have, since those are so popular, I have another book I'm working on called Micro Mythic, which takes 9 one-page rule sets and makes it into a full solo role-playing game. So it's a 9-page game, and each of those one-pagers handles one specific aspect of the game. So the idea is, if you want, you can use them all together, and you have it all in one. And it's not just a solo engine, but it's a full role-playing game. Or you can take and pick any of those that you want and use them with other games. So that's the idea behind that. So yeah, there's more one-page coming.
So you heard it first here, people.
And Tana, now you have your the Patreon. You release 49 magazines. Do you think Mythic still has many ways to be developed, to grow?
Yeah, it does. And this gets back to what we were talking about earlier with the community involvement. It's not just my ideas, but it's the players in the community. And like with Mythic Magazine, I keep a pile of article ideas in a folder. And most of these ideas come from players. And each time I put out an issue of the magazine, I will draw from that pile. And I mean, even after I just put out my 50th issue, and even after that pile of ideas, there's like 100 or more ideas still in there that I haven't even touched, and it keeps growing all the time.
That's good news. That's excellent news.
Yes.
Yeah. it just keeps going. And every time I ask players, like, hey, I'll go into the Patreon and say, hey, does anyone have any new ideas? And I'll get like bombarded with all this stuff. And so, yeah, and it's not just that there's like new ways to take Mythic, but as time goes on, culture changes, ideas change, people change, and so they want different things. And so, yeah, I mean, someday we'll probably be on Mythic magazine issue 800 or something. I don't think we're getting into it.
And did you talk in some moment that the Mythic stopped to be yours creation to become something different? It's not more yours because, like you said, it has community involvement and things. Say, hey, did you have this moment you see, hey, this is not only my product, only my book?
Yeah, that realization came very early on. Like when I mentioned about the war gamers taking on, I mean, that happened in the first year I put it out, and that was a realization to me that, hey, you know, I might have made this, but even I'm not seeing all the ways this can be used. I never even thought of war gamers like that. That's what really impressed upon me. That I need to collaborate with the community. You know, I'm the one kind of putting this together, and this, you know, originally my idea and all this kind of jazz, but there's like a much greater creative community mind out there. And so, yeah, very early on, I realized, yeah, okay, I wanted Mythic to grow in the same way, like how Mythic grows adventures. Mythic itself has grown in this kind of evolving way. So, yeah, very early on, I realized, I wouldn't say it's like not mine, but it's like, I would say it's ours.
How do you see the intersection of AIs with a solo RPG, or maybe along with Mythic? There are some people that abhor that, and others that embraced it very quickly from the first steps. How do you see it?
I have mixed feelings, to be honest. To me, it's a tool. I mean, AI is a tool. And I see people using it with solo oracles and Mythic. And so I think that's very cool because obviously, like where Mythic came from, many different inspirations. I'm a big fan of doing whatever you want with these tools and such. I'm not as happy with like generative art because that is the whole aspect of, you know, like copyright and theft. But it's more like something like Chat GPT or something, like to treat it like a game master. I hear a lot from people who use it that way. And just like we were saying before, how Mythic and oracles, they mix and match with each other very well because Mythic is a very modular thing. The same is true with if you're using it with like Chat GPT or something like that. Like if it's not something I would do because to me the process of playing solo, I enjoy the process. Like I don't want to export the process to something else. But that's me. That's what I enjoy. Someone else, though, if they may want something like Chat GPT because it maybe gives them some input that helps them with their process. So like everyone's different. I don't have a big feel for it myself just because I don't use it that much, but I've seen enough solo role players who do use it who really enjoy it. So
do you see it a lot on Mythic community?
I wouldn't say a lot, but I do see it some. And I see it used in all kinds of different ways, you know. So you can't really pinpoint like one use case for it. A lot of times people seem to use it as inspiration. It's almost like Chat GPT itself is like a meaning table, you know, and so they might ask it a question to get a prompt from them. So I can definitely, you know, that I can see that as use and being like an assistant. It's almost like it's your creativity. It's like you have your creativity. Mythic is an assistant giving input, and then AI is also giving input.
And that's interesting, a middle path of using both. And on your own games, do you use just pen and paper? Do you explore VTTs? What are your games like?
Over the years, I've done different approaches. Like I used to do a lot of it online. I used to do like play by post with other players. We were both players, and Mythic was the GM. These days, though, I very much like analog. I like the feel of it. I spend all day working on a computer, and so when I play my adventures, I like to sit down with a paper, a journal, a pencil, and dice, actual dice. That's what I like. But even as a solo role player myself, my tastes have changed over the years. There are times where I liked writing it out in long form, like it were a novel. There were times where I would just do everything in my head. I wouldn't write anything down. These days, I would say I kind of bullet journal in a book. So it's half in my head and half on paper. Mm-hmm. So we change.
It is very funny to see. I find it very funny to see the reactions of non-solo players when they start to think, oh, but how do you play it? Is it like you are talking to yourself all the time? And they start to get all the different ways of playing.
No, and this is, like I told, this is one of the difficulties of the people. How I play solo. It's like I want to play solo, but I don't know how to start to play. This is it's the great, the first step,
Not even the rules, but the action itself.
The action, how to.
Right. How do you wrap your head around that? Especially if you're an avid role player and you're role-playing games are very social by nature. Yes. And that's how they're designed. And like, as you say, even if you see all the rules explained, it doesn't, it's like trying to tell someone how to drive somewhere. The directions will sound extremely complicated. And until you actually do it, it's like, oh, you're just going a few blocks. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to get that across. That's one reason why Mythic, I put so many examples in there. I mean, it's like a lot of examples. It helps, but really the only way to do it, I think, is just to play. It's just do it yourself. And the nice thing is you ultimately, whatever way works for you is the right way. Every solo role player plays differently.
And now the last question that we received on Instagram is a very, very specific question. What is the best way of role-playing and guiding enemies during solo play?
Oh my gosh, the best way.
Very specific. The definitive best way, the only way from now on, you are going to decide, that's it.
Well, I have to say there is no best way, but this is one of those questions that comes up a lot. Like, if I'm playing solo, then I know what the enemies are going to do. Okay, so this is what I do, and I just treat like enemy behavior like anything else in Mythic. You're going to have an expectation, right? So if you come up to an orc in a dungeon, and what are they going to do? And so you think most likely they're going to attack. So you can make that a fake question. Do they attack? If it's yes, they attack. If it's no, they do something else. Like, what's the next thing you expect them to do? Maybe it's turn and run. Like, if you get a no, I wouldn't roll again. I would just go with what you think the next expectation is. So you create like a tree, like a branching tree of possible behaviors. Mm-hmm. And so yes might mean they attack. No might mean they turn and run. Exceptional yes might mean they like blow a horn calling reinforcements, then they attack, and more are going to come. Exceptional no might mean he runs like screaming in a panic. So it's like you've got 4 distinct behaviors there, right? from one expectation and one role. And you can keep having behavior branch out like that. Like every once in a while, like if it does attack, maybe it'll attack in the way you most expect. And then at some point you may ask again, does it run if things aren't going well for it? So every now and then ask a new question and let the behaviors branch out like that. So that's my advice to do it. And some people fall into the trap of asking like question after question. Does it attack? No. Okay. Does it try to argue with us? No. Okay. You just need one question and then let that branch out, and you can get some very complicated behaviors with some very simple questions.
Yeah, and
it works. And works.
So that's just one way to do it. I mean, there's lots of other ways you can do it.
Yeah, I like that there are some behavior tables for and actions, and when you are really stuck with what should happen, how someone should behave, is very good.
You could just hit a table, a meeting table, and then especially if you don't have any expectations, and if you get something like words like equipment empty. Maybe it means you realize this orc is unarmed and he has no armor. He's like totally unequipped, and which you might interpret to mean, oh, he was really surprised to see us. He's not even armed. So like, yeah, that's another way to do it, where you just roll on a meeting table and then run with it, and that can give you some surprises.
Yeah, and sometimes you get some surprises, like in the middle of the largest battle of your whole campaign, you roll lovingly and I don't know, tree during the speech of the commander of the army, and then you have to spend some time thinking about what that means.
Yeah, but that's where it gets really cool. Like you say that, and I picture like a commander trying to rally the troops. And to reach the troops, he climbs the nearest tree so they can all hear him. So now you have this dramatic scene of the commander standing in a tree yelling out to his troops. You wouldn't have thought of that without like a roll on the table. And it's like, you just get this interesting chain of events starting to go.
Yeah. Now there is a tree on the battlefield. What does that mean?
Right.
Perfect.
Some great moments, huh? Some great moments.
Yes, and true surprises. Yes, and real surprises.
So we have a comment here. For me, Mythic makes something really big. It is something like the hero of 1,000 faces, and even deeper. It shows the universal machine under the stars. Wow. You have a big fan here.
Yes.
Well, I like that, and that really coincides with how I look at this kind of stuff too. Like when I use Mythics, to me, in some ways, it's like opening a window into another universe and peeking in and seeing what you're going to see. And so it is kind of like that. It is kind of like it's like all of reality can be encapsulated in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why coming back to one of the first things I asked, is there something that doesn't work with Mythic? I still haven't found anything that doesn't work, and I'm trying. If I find it, I'm going to send you a message.
Please do.
Great.
Well, I think we went over all of the questions that I had
Great.
noted here. Anything else, Guilherme?
Nah, I think we talk a lot about how Mythic is born and where Mythic going. It's so amazing. It was an amazing talk.
So, if there is someone here watching us that still didn't buy Mythic, how would you convince this person?
Good question.
Wow. I would say that if they haven't tried solo role playing, they are missing an entire dimension of the role-playing experience. And if they have tried solo, but they haven't tried Mythic, I'm not going to say like Mythic is the best solo system in the universe or anything like that. Every game is different. Every game has its own flavor. Every game is wonderful. I would just suggest trying Mythic because it is a very modular game, and I made it that way on purpose so you can pick it apart and you can combine it with other games. And so it's I very much have in mind like utility value of the player, and so it's very useful in that regard. So I guess that would be my answer.
And it's a great answer.
Well, at the almost ending the interview, we are. I think it is important to say where we are at the crowdfunding now. We are at 102,000 reais, our currency here. Almost 600 people already on the
Wow.
participating on that. We are we already unlocked more than 20, what is it, 21, 22 magazines?
22.
22 magazines right now. We already have the Adventure Crafter unlocked
Yes.
for the backers.
Excellent.
Yes.
And we are almost at the Location Crafter.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's good because the Location Crafter in one of the earlier editions of the magazine, which is already unlocked, gets kind of an update. And so, yeah, having the Location Crafter in there will be a good addition.
And
And we have 12 days
12 days.
yeah, still
Yes.
12 days to unlock everything.
to unlock everything.